Hi team, welcome to the Kindness, Curiosity and Comfortable Shoes podcast. My name is James McFetrich and this is an ongoing toolkit for all healthcare staff. Whether you are a porter or a paediatrician, a domestic or a driver, clinical or non-clinical, just starting or just finishing your work in healthcare, this podcast aims to give you some useful thoughts about working for this amazing business to get you through your day. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you're finding that these thoughts in the podcast are useful and fulfilling the promise of being a toolkit for healthcare workers. I really want to make sure that these podcasts are accessible to all, and there are obviously costs to setting up and running them. So if you feel these podcasts have helped you, please help me to help others. You can support me by going to buymeacoffee.com/jmaceducation. That's buymeacoffee, all one word, .com/jmaceducation, and support me there. Or if you're listening through the podcast website at kccpodcast.buzzsprout.com, click on the heart at the top right to support the show up there. And if you can help me, then I can make this more accessible. And the thing that I really want to do next is get a transcription service available for each of the episodes for those people who want to get involved, but they cannot listen to podcasts. Thank you so much for your help. Something slightly different today. I like the format of these episodes being quite short form, something between 10 and 15 minutes. Hopefully really helpful if you've just got a short commute or if you have got time to sit down for a cup of tea either at work or at home. But I thought it may be helpful to have a few compilations every couple of weeks or so. So this is a compilation of the first 4 episodes, bit of an introduction to myself and an explanation about kindness, curiosity and comfortable shoes. A little bit about myself. I have had 25 years, goodness me, experience in healthcare in the NHS in the United Kingdom. And I've worked in various different roles and jobs during that time. Counting up, I've had experience in 11 different hospitals, 21 different jobs. That's all part of the training. And then I ended up as a consultant in emergency medicine in the northeast of England. And I was working in that role for 14 years. And during that time, some managerial experience. I was associate head of service for 4 years, but my predominant interest and time outside of clinical work was in education, both undergraduate and postgraduate education. And I think during that time, I saw a lot of people in the health service, a lot of people with different roles. And what I really enjoyed was seeing them grow and develop, but also realised there's a lot of things due to the nature of education where we're quite stifled by the boxes that need to be ticked, by the specific knowledge and skills that need to be acquired and learnt. And what I really wanted to do, and hopefully will do with this podcast, is across the board for whoever you are, wherever you work in a health service, specifically thinking about the NHS, that I will be able to give you some advice and thoughts that I've gleaned myself, but also through interacting with so many different people, things that I think are really important to be able to work comfortably in healthcare. Because let's face it, it's not an easy job. It can be quite stressful, clearly, with the things that we come across each day. And I've got a whole list of topics so far that I think are important and interesting for you, and certainly to enhance your work in healthcare. I'm hoping all these episodes are going to be 10 to 15 minutes long, something that you can listen to as part of your commute or during a break in your working day. And I'll also make sure that there's something for you to do, to think about during each episode that I'll explain in these show notes afterwards, something for you to think a bit more about if there's something that has got your interest. So why kindness, curiosity, and comfortable shoes? Well, this all started with a teaching session a few years ago. This was in June, and it was just before some medical students who were final year medical students. It was the last week of their time as medical students. They knew they'd passed the exams. This was very much an apprenticeship role they had in the emergency department. Then they'd have a month off before starting work in August. And I was asked the inevitable question, what do you think is the most useful thing that we should know for when we start work? And I know I've had lots of similar conversations over the years, and I had them myself, thinking back to when I started in different roles and when I started in as a house officer way back in 1997. And I know that what a lot of people are concerned about is, what do I do how do I manage someone when this happens on the ward? And I could see that's very much what these students wanted. But I've realised over time that those kind of things, it's scary when you first come across someone who's really sick. It's really frightening when you're the only person there in front of someone who's clearly very unwell. But you can learn how to manage that, and there are always other people around. But the thing that always comes back to me is how to manage well in a healthcare environment is to think back to those core values of why we end up in a healthcare setting. And it's usually kindness. We want to be kind to people. We want to help people. How many people, if you think back to your job interviews where someone has asked what suits you to this job, and it will often come back to, well, I like helping people. I want to give something back. But that all really comes back to kindness. We want to be kind to people. And it's really easy to forget that in the stress of a job when you've got loads of things on your list of things to do for that working day. And kindness really is at the core of what we deliver in healthcare. Whatever aspect of healthcare you work in, we need to remember that core nugget of kindness. So I said the first thing is just make sure you're kind to people. And the second thing that certainly inspires me still, even though I have less of a clinical role now, but that curiosity about what is going on. However busy you are, however stressed you are, if you've got an issue, a situation in front of you, to think, why is this happening? Why this? Inspire that nugget in your head to think, why, what is going on here? I want to find out more. And whatever your role, again, doesn't matter what your role is in the hospital. You may not have a clinical contact with patients, but we're still interested in what is going on. What happens to that person who comes to healthcare environment with a particular problem, whether that's urgently or non-urgently. We're curious about what's going on. And that's something I'm going to explore in the episode when I come on to curiosity a bit more. So that's the second thing I said to these students. I said, you need to be kind, but absolutely you need to be curious about what's going on. And then I thought, well, all things, good things come in threes. It's nice to have a third aspect to this. And it probably ought to start with a curse sound, knowing that I've got kindness and curiosity. And I thought around, and one of those things that we easily forget when we are in that challenging environment is we forget about ourselves. And one way we can look after ourselves is by having comfortable shoes. Most people in healthcare are on their feet all day, 8, 10, 12-hour shifts, often longer than that. And so we need to look after ourselves. And the easiest way of doing that is having a pair of comfortable shoes. So in that episode, I'm going to explore a bit more about how we can look after ourselves in simple, easy terms like investing in a good pair of shoes. So those were the three things that I said to the students: kindness, curiosity, and comfortable shoes. And if you remember those three things, everything else will fall into place. And they thanked me for their time. And one of them did get in touch with me a couple of months later just to thank me for those words that weren't all clinical and this is how you treat this specific problem, or this is how you manage this particular aspect on the infernal IT system. So I've often come back to those three aspects and thought it'd be interesting to pull together a podcast based on those three principles, but also other aspects that would form a toolkit, if you like, to help anyone who works in healthcare and covers some of those things that we're perhaps aware of but aren't talked about quite so much, and do a bit of a deeper dive into those things that may just enhance your work in healthcare and that I think are important and interesting. I'm so excited to be doing this. I've been thinking about it on and off for the last 18 months, 2 years, and things have finally come together that I can put this out there. So I'm really looking forward to exploring all this, doing a bit of research about some of these keywords and pulling these podcasts together. So I hope you are happy to join me on this, and we'll be looking forward to each weekly podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. This episode focuses on kindness, and brilliantly, the week before I've been recording this, the General Medical Council mentioned kindness in their revamped Good Medical Practice as part of making sure that doctors create respectful, fair and compassionate workplace for colleagues and patients. To me, it's slightly worrying that it's not been in the good medical practice guidance before. But anyway, there it is, literally in the week that I am recording the podcast. It's funny, isn't it? Because kindness is so integral to working in healthcare, especially if you are facing patients. You'd think that would be a very natural part of being in that caring environment. And hey, when we interviewed for jobs, often that classic question, what draws you to this profession? What do you think you can bring to it? It's because we want to help people and we want to be kind to people. If you look at some of the stuff on social media about medicine or the NHS, and it's very easy for it to deteriorate into people slating each other, slating the care that they may or may not have got. And people try and rally against that by, hashtag be kind, to make sure that we remember it's really important to be kind to each other. Yes, we can improve our services. If you look at anything in detail, we can improve, but that's no reason to be rude to others. But isn't it astonishing that we need that reminder to be kind to each other? I guess it's very easy on social media when it feels like you're not communicating with a real person. But even in real life, we see that. We forget about the humans that we are talking to and the difficulties that they may be going through. And they need us to be kind. We need people to be kind to us. And in any stressful job, as I've said previously, in healthcare, in the NHS, it is stressful work. It's even more important to remember to be kind. And you can get such a powerful response to very simple acts of kindness. I think back to a night shift I was doing a couple of years back. It was fairly hectic in the emergency department. I was the sole consultant there, in fact, the sole consultant in the hospital. And got to that stage about 3-4 in the morning where things were just starting to calm down, had a bit of control of what was going on. And the nurse in charge, lovely guy called Rich, he turned to me and we looked at each other and he just said, "Mate, do you want a cup of tea?" And I've had more stressful nights. I've definitely had busier nights, but that meant so much to me that he knew exactly what I needed at that time. For those of you who know me, I do love a good cup of tea, but for me, it's very much a social thing. I like holding it in a nice mug. Having tea at work just feels a bit wrong because it doesn't give you that sort of relaxation. I'm not a coffee drinker, so I don't really drink drinks for the caffeinated hit. But at that moment in time, God, it was just what I wanted. And he was busy as well, but just a couple of minutes, just that he acknowledged that would be helpful to me. And he went and made me a cup of tea, and we just sat down for a couple of minutes and had a bit of a chat. And that simple act of kindness meant so much to me and absolutely helped me get through the rest of the shift, but it also helped our relationship. Consultant in charge of the emergency department, nurse in charge of the emergency department. We clearly need to get on very well, and it just helps to form those strong bonds that you need to be able to work in that environment. And it is really important. Kindness is so much more than just being nice to each other. It does help us work better together and communicate better. And believe it or not, there is really good evidence that it actually improves patient outcomes if we are kind to each other and clearly to patients as well. So there's another emergency medicine consultant, a guy called Chris Turner, and he heads up the Civility Saves Lives group. And they've got loads of information and links to research on their website about being kind, being civil to each other. And he absolutely demonstrates it's not just nice to be kind, but according to Chris, it really creates that atmosphere of trust that allows people to ask for help. And for me, that's so important for patients, clearly. If they want help, we don't want patients to feel embarrassed or that they're not going to get listened to. They need to be able to ask for help if they want it. And the same for staff. Certainly in the areas of work I've been in, we run a very flat hierarchy, but it can still feel difficult to ask for help if you feel you're talking to someone more senior than you. But just through being kind to each other, it does give that atmosphere that it's okay, we can talk to each other, we can trust each other. Sometimes it's difficult to know, what does it mean to be kind? What are we actually doing to be kind? But it can be something very simple, very straightforward, simple as just making eye contact, smiling, asking how you're doing today, hopefully perhaps going a bit deeper if you just get the standard, yeah, I'm fine response. But now, how are you really doing today? Could be holding the door open for someone, could be helping someone out with some work that they're doing if they're struggling with. It doesn't need to be anything too deep, just to help that communication and help that teamwork. So my challenge to you, what are you going to do as a result of listening to this? Maybe you've not thought about kindness in this kind of way before, because it feels like we all should do it. Should be fairly straightforward, shouldn't it? So just have a think. What spontaneous act of kindness have you undertaken recently at work? And if you can't think of one, what are you going to do next time? Today I'm talking about curiosity. And, well, the first thing I find curious is every time I try and write it, when I type it, I try and put a U in there. There's no U in curiosity. How is that the case? What's that all about? But that, I guess, is what curiosity is about, having just an interest in the world around you, asking those questions, exploring why things are a certain way. It's almost like going back to being a 4 or 5-year-old and asking that incessant why. When our children were smaller, that sort of age, we always challenged ourselves as parents never to finish one of those chains of incessant whys with a just because. We always had to find an answer for the why. How often in healthcare, or possibly any big business, do we feel that we undertake certain work just because that's the way we always do it, just because that's the way the boss likes it? I don't think that makes for a very fulfilling work environment, and I think it's quite healthy to challenge anything that happens like that. Often, if you are at the coalface consistently doing things, you're the person who can explore how things can be done in a different way. But that starts with asking why. Having any inquiring mind just shows interest in our surroundings and an engagement with what is going on. And I certainly feel that can only enhance our day. I came across this a couple of weeks back when I was watching the BBC's SAS Rogue Heroes series. And there's a great character, well, but not character as such, he's based on a real person called Paddy Mayne. And he gives this opening speech to some new recruits. I won't recreate his accent, but he says, and I'm going to paraphrase this for obvious reasons for those of you who know it. Lesson number 1, on morning number 1, you must ask why. Because if you know why you are carrying out your mission, when things screw up, as they inevitably will, you will know how to achieve what you set out to achieve in a different way, in your own way. That sort of underlies some of how the ways that the SAS work. And it's maybe not quite the same in healthcare, but I do think it's a really good challenge to be asking why, so you understand the process, why you're undertaking certain tasks. It's certainly a good challenge and a good way to learn. If you're with someone and someone can't explain why you or they are doing something, it's possibly an inefficient way of working, and that's how we can improve our working lot. Certainly from a safety perspective, it's one of the first things we suggest when you need to speak up. If you see something that's not quite right, that you have concerns, one of the first steps that you may take is to probe as to why something is happening. It's just gentle questioning. It's very sensible to get into that mindset. And if you are patient-facing in healthcare, if you have frequent conversations with patients, especially if you're part of the diagnostic team, clearly having curiosity in patients helps us understand where they're coming from, helps us understand how their illness is affecting them, and definitely can help us diagnose them better. Just asking that question, why? Why do you feel that it's this particular disease that you're concerned about? Why are there issues with taking this medication? We also know that if you show an interest in patients, funnily enough, that lessens complaints. And if you're fairly new to healthcare, you may think, well, that's a bit strange. Of course, I'm interested in patients. Well, we all are, but sometimes with stress and pressures of work, sometimes if you are in a very routine part of healthcare, I think that genuine interest that we have deep down inside us can sometimes get a bit lost. So reminding ourselves why we're with patients and being curious about what's going on with them definitely helps that patient interaction. And as I say, there's really good evidence that it reduces complaints and incidents purely by showing a bit more interest. One of my colleagues called Bob, he's an ultrasound enthusiast, and I have tried over the years to try and emulate him and try and increase my interest and understanding of ultrasound in emergency medicine. And the thing that I see really pushes him forward is that he's curious. He's always wanting to know why, finding out a bit more about what he can with patients by the use of ultrasound. His ongoing engagement and interest and understanding of ultrasound is by having a patient in front of him that perhaps doesn't necessarily need that, but he will spend a couple of minutes with a quick ultrasound of their heart or lungs or stomach to find out a bit more about them. And, oh, that's interesting. How does that square up with my understanding of the patient with other tests that are available? And for me, that all stems from the why. Being curious about what is going on with those patients is increasing his understanding in that very specific field. Sometimes, however, it's easy to think, well, I'm trying to be curious, but I don't know how to phrase the questions. I don't know how to explore things more. So I'm going to leave you with something that is really from the coaching field. Well, actually, originally it's from police interrogation field, but a good few steps few key phrases, I guess, that you can have in your toolkit to think about how to frame questions to ask patients or ask anyone who you're working with to explain a bit more about what's going on. And these are called TEDS questions, TEDS. So the T is for tell me more, E is explain to me, D, describe to me, and S, show me. So if you're having a conversation with someone and you're just not sure the right way to phrase things, you want to encourage them to talk a bit more, you can use any one of those 4 starting phrases. Tell me more about that pain. Explain to me exactly why we are undertaking this audit. Describe to me how you manage at home. Show me on yourself whereabouts you get the pain and what the problems are. Really nice, easy technique just to get people to be talking a bit more and can satisfy your curiosity as well as deepening the relationship with whoever you are talking to. I hope that's useful and it's something that you can take into your everyday practice. Remember to be curious. It will only deepen your relationship. And if you are stuck, use those TEDS questions. This episode is entitled Comfortable Shoes, and I think it's probably the most important aspect of this toolkit. Buy a pair of comfortable shoes. Buy a pair of comfortable shoes. It's all about being kind to yourself. I don't think we're very good in healthcare about looking after ourselves, and it's so important for us to look after ourselves so we can do the job to the best of our ability. And for my money, getting a pair of comfortable shoes is the best thing that you can do. Think about your day-to-day work. Most of us are on our feet all the time. That may be 8, 10, 12-hour shifts, maybe longer depending on exactly where you work. Every step we take is in a pair of shoes. Now, if you're in a pair of shoes that look great but are slightly uncomfortable, don't fit brilliantly, that's really going to have an effect by the end of your shift. And over a number of shifts, over a number of months or years, you're going to end up with quite significant problems, either with your feet, but possibly your ankles, knees, hips, back. All of that is affected by the type of shoe that you wear. My children will tell you that I have a natural hatred of high-heeled shoes because they do such horrible things to all your joints, obviously your feet and ankles, but even your knees, even your back will be affected if you wear high-heel shoes. They may look great, don't get me wrong, but they're doing awful things to you long-term. If you have a pair of comfortable shoes, you're going to put them on at the start of the day. They're going to be with you all day. They're going to be as comfortable at the start of the day as at the end of the day. And it's a real investment in yourself. And it's the same with something like a mattress. I know that as healthcare staff, we're unlikely to spend the theoretical third of your life in bed. But even so, even with shift work, it could easily be a quarter. Do you know, even if it's a fifth of your life that you're spending in bed, make sure that it's comfortable for you, that it's good for you. You need to get some rest in comfort, even more so if you work night shifts, as well as the other things that help you get a good night's sleep. We'll talk specifically about night shifts in a future episode. But it's all about investing in yourself, making sure that you are giving yourself the best opportunity to be comfortable, get a good night's rest, or with the shoes that you're walking around without giving you longer term problems because of your feet. And what I like about this, and clearly why I want it as the top 3 things in this podcast, is that you can have control over what you put on your feet. If you've got a tough day at work, it's really tricky to do all the things that we're told about how we should look after ourselves, to eat well, to have regular breaks. You know, that's so difficult if we're working anywhere with any high acuity, high turnover of patients. A number of times I've finished a shift and found the well-meaning salad in a Tupperware box slightly wilted because it's been sat in my office all day. That's really difficult to control. But you know what I can control? What I put on my feet at the start of the day. and they will be with me through the whole shift. So think about how you can be kind to yourself. We need to be the best that we can be to do this work in healthcare. There's always something else that's going to get in the way. There's always one more patient you could see, one more email that you could answer that's always going to counteract against how we can look after ourselves. So look for those simple things that will help you get through this shift. And it's all about the relationship that you have with yourself. Because the longest relationship you'll have with anyone on this earth is with yourself. And most of us are kind, helpful people, and we think about our relationships with our family and our friends, and obviously those are really, really important. But you must look after yourself. That is your longest relationship. Put some effort and attention into thinking about how you can be the best person you can be. What do you need? And I don't see that as being selfish at all. I think that helps you be the best person and helps you be kinder and a better person and have better relationships with other people. And clearly for today's topic, I feel the easiest way of doing that is going out and getting a good pair of comfortable shoes. With my second paycheck that I had as a house officer back in 1997, my take-home pay was £1,100. And I knew that I could see that I needed something comfortable for my feet. This is when we were living down in Sheffield, and I found a guy who was a cobbler, traditional cobbler, and he made me some shoes, made-to-measure shoes. And at the time, it was about 100 quid. That felt like a lot. That was 10% of my monthly wage packet. And that was such an indulgence, but they were really comfortable. They really helped me get through those days. So think about what is helpful to you, what investment is going to be helpful to you. It may be shoes, it may be something else, not anything as a short-term treat. Although that's no bad thing, is it, to treat ourselves every so often. But how are you going to invest yourself in the longer term? Think about something you're going to do to look after yourself that's going to make you a better person, a more effective person. And it's nice just to treat yourselves. It doesn't have to be big and expensive, but something that is going to help you get you through your day. I hope you like that bumper pack of the Kindness, Curiosity and Comfortable Shoes podcast. More episodes are produced every week, wherever you get your podcasts from. Thank you for listening today. Let me know what you thought about this episode. I am on @JMacEducation on all the socials. And there are links in the show notes for anything that we've talked about today that may be of interest or further reading for you. I'd be really grateful if you could rate, review and subscribe. And most importantly, if you found this helpful, please tell your colleagues about this podcast. So please take care of yourselves out there. You are doing a great job. And remember, be kind, be curious, and don't forget your comfortable shoes. Thank you to Shakina Studio for the music, downloaded through Audio Jungle. Thank you to Beth for the artwork and the photo, produced through Canva. And thank you to Buzzsprout for hosting the podcast. The Kindness, Curiosity and Comfortable Shoes podcast is a JMac Education production.